Hello and thanks once again for taking the time to download and listen to a podcast from CelticUnderground.net. I'm Harry Brady and this week's podcast will have no music. I'm on my holidays, but last week we had the Celtic Graves Society going that extra mile to the Czech Republic for a commemoration that if you were listening to the podcast extra you would know about, but it was a commemoration of one of the early Celtic players, Mr. Johnny Madden. So because there's no music and my voice is boring enough, I thought I would just get straight on to the podcast provided by Jim, and he'll do the introductions and let you know what's coming along. So don't forget the food bank collection at the weekend. There's also the James Kelly's Celtic Graves event on Sunday with a podcast extra coming up about that. So enough of me, I'll leave it with him, and all I'll say is good night and God bless.
This podcast is in 3 parts. Firstly, the ceremony to commemorate the life of Johnny Madden held in April the 1st in Prague. Secondly, an interview with Brendan Sweeney of the Celtic Graves Society. And thirdly, Davey, Owen and Kenny chat about the ceremony and we talk about Johnny Madden. And finally, there's a very special little song written about the man himself. I hope you enjoy it.
Dámy a pánové, přivítal jsem naše školské hosty ze společnosti Celtic Graves Society a vyzval jsem nás všechny, abychom zahájili naši pietní vzpomínku na Johna Maddena, jeho příbuzné manželku Františku a syna Harryho, kteří jsou pohřbeni v tomto hrobě také. A vlastně můžu říct, abychom uctili památku všech fotbalových legend Celticu Glasgow a Slavie Praha minutou ticha. Děkuji. Děkuji. Thank you very much. We got here. This is applause for our guests from Scotland. We got here only a few hours, only 3 days to be more precise, after the British government decided to trigger a process called the Brexit. I'm not the one to either praise or criticize British government for taking this step. And I don't want to assess what it means for the future of Britain itself or for the future of the rest of Europe. But I can't resist mentioning that almost 70 years after his death in 1948, John Madden, the son of the rock from the little Scottish town of Dumbarton, who became a great football teacher of our nation, is more than ever a unifying rather than decisive force. He came to Prague for the first time in 1904 as a coach of Celtic FC when they toured Europe, Central Europe, playing against Viennese and Prague clubs. They beat DFC Prague 3-0 and Slavia Prague 4-1. We don't know much about the period of time between 1897, when John Madden ended his professional football career in Scotland, and 1904. We don't know much about his whereabouts and doings. But what we do for sure is that he appeared in Prague in February 1905, burst into the dressing room of Slavia Prague and said, maybe a bit arrogantly, sternly, to the shocked players who had never seen a proper coach or trainer or manager before, I am Madden. The rest is, as they say, history. The legend says the Slavia Prague at the turn of the century desperately wanted and needed a proper coach, because in Czech football there had been no coaches or managers. And they dreamed about coach coming from Britain. So they sent a delegation to the British Isles to find a proper coach for Slavia Prague. And as the legend has it, they approached to John Tate Robertson, a player of Glasgow Rangers who was also born, like Mr. Madden, in Dumbarton. But he politely declined becoming the first playing coach of Chelsea FC, the newly founded club, in 1905, scoring the first ever competitive goal for the first club of today's Premier League. And after that, other two players of Glasgow Rangers who were born in Dumbarton are said to play a dirty trick on Slavia Prague, putting a Glasgow Rangers shirt on John Madden, taking a photo of him and sending it to Prague, to Slavia Prague. So this is the legend, how John Madden came to Prague in 1905. And what he did was simply revolutionize Czech football. Before, the players usually chased the ball on the pitch during the games, during the trainings. He introduced a structured, systematic training units with exercise, gymnastics, shooting with both legs, playing with and without ball. He also introduced a day off for the players after a game. But on the other hand, he also introduced sessions where they analyzed previous match or matches. He is said to have been a very good herb doctor, picking himself some medicines, some herbs, and making his own medicines, applying it to the injured joints or muscles of the players. And he wanted more, actually. He wanted more powers to become not only a coach but a manager as well. So the bosses of Slavia became a bit jealous because they felt that they would be stripped of at least some powers. But at the same time, they could see that Madden was very successful with his methods. When Celtic came to Prague, again in 1906, they could only manage a draw when playing against Slavia Prague. The game ended 3-3. And if I fast forward, in 1922, when Celtic came for the third time to Prague, they were beaten by Madden's Slavia 3-2. So it only describes the improvement that Slavia made under the guidance of this great John Madden. He won the very first cup competition held in former Bohemia, a part of Austria-Hungary at that time, called Charity Cup. He won it 4 times. He won the league championship called the Championship of the Czech Football Association in 1913, which was retroactively recognized as the very first official title of Slavia Prague. He won it again in 1915, this time in the war competition, so it's not recognized as a title of Slavia. After Czechoslovakia was born in 1918, they played a league called Championship of Central Bohemian Region, winning it in 1918 and 1924 again. But above all, when professional football was introduced to Czechoslovakia in 1925, Slavia under John Madden won 3 titles in 1925, the very first season of Czechoslovak professional football in 1929 and 1930, which means that the tenure of John Madden at Slavia spans over a quarter of a century, exactly 25 years. It came to an end on the 4th of June 1930, when Slavia typically beat their arch rival Sparta Prague 3-2 on the very last day of the Czech Professional League, winning the title without being beaten. When the celebrations started at the conference room of Slavia, Madden is said to burst in, saying to the stunned audience, "I am finished. There is nothing I can give to Slavia anymore." Nobody dared to oppose him. So that's like his coaching years came to an end. He still lived for another 18 years together with his wife, unfortunately not together with his son, who died very young as a talented Slavia Prague player, because he committed suicide because of an unhappy love affair, jumping under a train here in Prague. So John Madden remained loyal to Slavia, working in the background staff, coming to every match of Slavia Prague, but not meddling in the work of his successors. He died on the 17th of April 1948, just a few weeks after the communist putsch in former Czechoslovakia. And when they were burying him, an honor guard of Slavia players in Slavia shirts were carrying his coffin to this very grave. So this is the story of the true legend of Scottish and Czech football as well. And I know that John Madden is still with us today, looking upon us, maybe smiling, maybe puffing away on his famous pie. And if somebody asked him about his opinion about the Brexit, my guess is that he would maybe very silently but very distinctively utter quite a few Czech swearing words he was so good at. Thank you very much for listening. And now I have the pleasure to introduce one of our guests from Celtic Graves Society, Mr. Brandon Sweeney. Já se pokusím po částech přeložit jeho řeč.
Thanks very much, Peter. Apologies for my Scottish accent, but this is exactly how Johnny Madden would have sounded when he led Slavia Prague to glory. I think Peter's going to translate some of my words.
Omlouvám se za svoji skočtinu, což patří zřejmě mně, protože já tady budu se teď velice potit. Jak asi víte, skotský přízvuk je velice těžký pro překladatele a já nejsem profesionální překladatel. Nicméně se pokusím přeložit, co budu moct.
Having only arrived in Prague yesterday, the Celtic Graves Society can understand why Johnny Madden fell in love with this city and with Slavia Prague and decided to stay here for the rest of his life.
Když jsme včera přijeli a strávili tady svůj první den, tak jsme pochopili, proč John Madden, když přijel do Prahy, tak se rozhodl strávit tady drahnou dobu, vlastně až do konce svého života.
The very fact that he stayed at the same club for 25 years showed that Johnny Madden loved Slavia Prague just as much as Slavia Prague loved him. At Celtic, we idolise our legends for eternity, and it's great to see Slavia Prague share these same values with your legends, men such as Pepe Bitsan, Antonin Puch, František Plančka and František Vesely.
Možná netřeba překládat. Celtic si váží svých legend a váží si jich stejně, jako si váží Slavia svých legend, jejichž jména jste slyšeli.
I hope I got that right.
Yeah, of course.
The Celtic Graves Society have been overwhelmed by the generosity and the hospitality shown by Obdor Pratel, by Slavia Prague, by Bernie Thompson and by many individuals who have arranged this ceremony, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Šokování přijetím, kterého se nám dostalo tady v Praze od odboru Přátel Slávie, Bernieho Thompsona a mnoha jiných lidí, kteří jsou jistě dnes mezi námi. Chci jim z celého srdce poděkovat.
We would like to thank the people of Prague and Slavia in particular for taking Johnny Madden to your hearts. He is a Slavia legend. He is also a Celtic legend, and today we are extremely proud and humbled to stand with you, united in memory of the Celtic boy who became the father of Czech football.
Jsme velice vděční všem Pražanům, že ho přijali za svého, že se dostal do jejich srdcí a že si ho váží stejně, jako si ho vážíme my, protože John Madden je velkou legendou jak Slavie Praha, tak Celticu Glasgow.
Watching Slavia Prague chain yesterday was a special privilege, and we noticed that it actually broke one of Johnny Madden's own rules, whereby no audience will be allowed at training. But we wish Slavia Prague all the best in their derby match tomorrow.
Včera jsme byli na tréninku Slavie, což bylo pro nás obrovským privilegiem, obrovskou poctou, ale na něm jsme taky viděli něco, co by Madden nepřipustil, totiž, že na tréninky nechodili žádní lidé, nebyla tam. A chtěl bych popřát všechno nejlepší Slavii Praha do zítřejšího derby s pražskou Spartou.
When Johnny Madden arrived in Prague in 1905, as a coach, he was already years ahead of his time, and as a player with Celtic, he was years ahead of his time also. He was the first player to lead the Celtic attack in our very first match in 1888. He was part of the first Celtic team that won the treble in 1892. He was the first Celtic player to score a penalty. He was even the first Celtic player to get sent off in a match for fighting in our very first ever match at the current Celtic Park in 1892.
Když John Madden přijel do Prahy, tak byl už dávno někde jinde. Vlastně předběhl svou dobu. Jak ve Slavii Praha, on vlastně předběhl svou dobu už jako hráč Celticu Glasgow, protože John Madden vedl vůbec první útok Celticu v prvním zápase v roce 1888 jako střední útočník. Zažil první treble, tedy trojnásobné vítězství v lize a pohárech ve Skotsku v roce 1893. Byl také prvním vyloučeným hráčem Celticu a tak dále.
As a coach with Slavia, he introduced Celtic's passing game, and he brought with him a whole new training regime which taught players the importance of diet, practice and lifestyle. He led a revolution that paved the way for a golden era at Slavia Prague.
John Madden zavedl ve Slavii Praha passing game, což je vlastně dnešní tiki-taka, dalo by se říct. Hra krátkých přihrávek, kterými proslul skotský fotbal v té době, a v podstatě zrevolucionizoval český fotbal, jak už jsem sám řekl před chvílí.
As a player with Celtic, he was innovative. Winning wasn't good enough. He wanted to entertain. The back heel and the dummy were techniques used by Johnny Madden in the 1890s, long before the likes of Johan Cruyff.
John Madden byl revolucionář nejenom v tom, že chtěl vyhrávat, on chtěl mnohem víc, on chtěl bavit. A k jeho vynálezu mezi jiným patří patička, ještě jedna finta, kterou jsem z té skočtiny nepochopil, který mi proslul mnohem dřív než Johan Cruyff a další legendy světového fotbalu.
But like many Scots, Johnny was a very tough, disciplined player, and he was given the nickname the Rooter due to his fierce shot, which was said to be able to uproot the goalposts. According to one newspaper report in Glasgow, referees were known to shrivel up beneath the lash of his withering irony, and he certainly wasn't a person to be messed with. I see in Prague he was nicknamed Dedek, Which in Scotland means grumpy old man.
Exactly. It's very often translated as grandpa and is not a good translation. Old geezer or old cadger would be much more precise. Pan Sweeney říká, že kromě toho, že John Madden bavil lidi, že byl velmi disciplinovaný hráč.
Router.
Jo. A proslul dělovými ranami, pro které získal přezdívku The Rooter. Anglicky The Rooter, nebo root, znamená kořen. A ta přezdívka zřejmě souvisí s tím, že dával takové rány, že jimi dokázal vyvrátit brankové tyče z kořenu, jak by se řekl. Báli se ho vlastně i rozhodčí a byl to určitě hráč, s kterým nebylo radno si zahrávat ani z pohledu spoluhráčů, protihráčů a dokonce i rozhodčí.
Johnny Madden's toughness and character building can be traced back to his childhood in the streets of Dumbarton, where his parents had settled after they were forced to flee Ireland after the Great Famine, which killed 1 million and forced another 1 million to emigrate. He left school at 12 and went straight into the shipyards, where he was forced to grow up quickly.
Kořeny jeho houževnaté povahy lze vystopovat v jeho dětství, které strávil v malém městečku Dumbarton, ležícím asi 20 kilometrů od Glasgow. Je to syn irských přistěhovalců, kteří uprchli z Irska před proslulým hladomorem, který si vyžádal 1 milion obětí a které donutil další 1 milion Irů k emigraci. Madden opustil školu ve svých 12 letech a nastoupil jako dělník do loděnic.
By the time he was 21, amongst many firsts, he became the first Catholic to play for his local team, Dumbarton. And by the end of that same season, he enjoyed a meteoric rise that took him to Hampden Park, where he played in the Scottish Cup final against Hibernian, but they lost 2-1.
V 21 letech se stal prvním katolickým hráčem místního klubu v Dumbartonu a tím začal jeho meteoretický vzestup, jeho růst, který ho dovedl až do Hampden Parku v Glasgow, do finále skotského poháru, kde bohužel jeho klub prohrál.
Just a year later, Celtic were founded to feed the poor children of the 3 parishes in Glasgow's dark East End, and Johnny Madden soon became a target for the new Celtic committee.
O rok později, to bylo v roce 1887, byl v Glasgow založen vlastně farnostmi v několika čtvrtích toho města Celtic Glasgow a výboři nově vzniklého klubu se brzy po vzniku zaměřili na přestup Johna Maddena, který byl v té době už známým fotbalistou.
Celtic Park was the perfect place for Johnny Madden to excel into a top-class centre forward, as he enjoyed our fast, attacking, passing game, and soon the winners' medals began to mount up.
Pro Johnnyho byl Celtic Park úžasnou scénou, na které vyrostl zářivého hráče, který zbožňoval hru krátkých přihrávek a medaile a trofeje na sebe nedali dlouho čekat.
After 8 seasons at Celtic, he won 3 league titles, 4 Glasgow Cups and 5 Charity Cups, as we rose to the top of the Scottish game, playing an exciting new brand of football never seen before, which was christened the Celtic Way.
V 8 sezónách, které strávil John Madden v Celticu Glasgow, získal s klubem 3 ligové tituly, 4 vítězství v poháru a jestli jsem správně pochytil, tak 5 vítězství v další pohárové soutěži. Madden vyspěl v útočníka, který prostě exceloval.
25 years after he left Celtic, Johnny Madden had still never forgotten his first love, and he invited Celtic over to play Slavia in Prague. The Celtic manager was the legendary Willie Maley, who was a teammate of Johnny Madden in the 1890s. But Johnny Madden was in no mood to allow his fierce, competitive edge to slacken, even against his beloved Celtic, when during the match, which Slavia won 3-2, he told Willie Maley, as he tended to an injured player, "We'll still beat you with 10 men. When he came back up to his seat, Johnny Madden apologised to the Celtic manager and said, "I withdraw that remark. We could beat you with 9 men."
Když přijel Celtic v roce 1904 do Prahy, vyhrál nad Slavií Praha 3-2, bylo to v 10 mužích. Johnny Madden, jestli jsem správně rozuměl, si vzal tuhle poznámku k srdci a řekl, příště, až přijedete, tak vás porazíme v 9.
Just like Ohhh, Pratel are the friends of Slavia, the Celtic Graves Society are very much the friends of Celtic. The club have our total devotion. The Celtic Graves Society was formed 7 years ago, and in that time we have held over 30 events to mark and commemorate the graves of former Celtic players, managers and board.
Velmi si vážíme a oceňujeme práci odboru Přátel Slávie. Možná se pro ně stala jakýmsi vzorem, protože Celtic Graves Society, což znamená doslova spolek, který udržuje hroby legend Celticu Glasgow, vznikl teprve před 7 lety, ale už máme za sebou asi 30 různých akcí k uctění památky našich legend.
We have worked with Celtic Football Club to arrange a celebration mass to mark the club's 125th anniversary, attended by almost 2,000 Celtic fans in the parish of St Mary's, where the club was formed, and we have erected an 8-foot Celtic cross in memory of the founding fathers at a cemetery near Celtic Park, where they are buried.
Při příležitosti 125. výročí založení Celticu Glasgow jsme uspořádali velkou vzpomínkovou akci v té farnosti města Glasgow, kde byl Celtic založen. Navštívilo ji kolem 2000 lidí a vstyčili jsme tam vzpomínkový kříž se jmény legendárních hráčů klubu.
Our ideal is to cherish the memories of those who have played a part in making Celtic the club that it is and keeping their names alive.
Naším cílem je prostě udržovat v paměti památku všech, kteří prošli Celticem Glasgow a kteří se zasloužili o jeho slávu.
Tom O'Neill, the great nephew of Johnny Madden, cannot be here today, but he sends his best wishes for today's event to his many friends in Prague. He is delighted that Johnny Madden's name is being kept alive in the city that has taken him to their hearts, and he is eternally grateful to Slavia Prague.
Prasynovec Johna Maddena, pan Tom O'Neill, který žije v Glasgow a který vzhledem k věku a zdravotnímu stavu nemůže být dnes s námi, je velmi vděčný za to, co jsme mu dnes připravili. Velmi si toho váží, posílá nám srdečné pozdravy a přeje nám hodně zdaru o tomto víkendu.
7 members of the Celtic Graves Society have travelled from Glasgow, but also Johnny Madden's great-nephew, Tom O'Neill's brother-in-law. Brendan O'Hhh has travelled over from Belfast with his wife and her father, and shortly after I've spoke, Brendan will play an Irish air.
Je s námi i pan Brendan O'Hhh, který přijel s manželkou a s příbuzenstvem z Belfastu. A jak vidíte, má sebou hudební nástroj a rád by potom nakonec naší pětní vzpomínkové slavnostní něco zahrál. Pan Sweeney představoval i další členy nebo člena delegace. Já si myslím, že bychom jim přece jenom mohli třeba ještě jednou zatleskat.
To show our appreciation, we have some small gifts to mark the friendship between our two great clubs. First of all, we have a replica of the original Celtic top, which Johnny Madden would have worn in Celtic's first ever match in 1888. And we'd like to present this, please, to Miroslav from Ohhh, Pratel.
Abychom dokázali svůj vděk za to, co jste pro nás uchystali, tak si dovolíme předat několik malých dárků, které jsme sebou přivezli z Glasgow. Na prvním místě je to replika dresu Celticu Glasgow, který mohl mít na sobě John Madden ve svém prvním zápase za tento klub v roce 1888 a já si ho teď dovolím předat panu Mirkovi Pomykalovi z odboru Přátel Slávie.
Je to někdo s knírem, že se hrál Johnnyho, že to byli. I'm looking for someone with the mustache, like, dressing as a Johnny. No hipsters here. Johnny is the only one and very first one.
We also have a couple of gifts which Celtic Football Club have asked us to present to Slavia Prague Football Club as a mark of friendship.
Máme sebou také několik dárků, které jsme přivezli ze Celticu, protože vedení Celticu nás požádalo, abychom předali tyto dary Slavii Praha jako důkaz našeho přátelství.
And we'd like to present them just now.
Rádi bychom je teď předali také.
No jasně, pane sekretáři. A zvednu.
To bys...
A ještě ukážu. Děkuji.
2017 is the 50th anniversary of Celtic's magnificent European Cup win in Lisbon when we beat Inter Milan 2-1, and the first gift was a miniature of the European Cup.
Ten dárek se vlastně týká slavného výročí, 50. výročí od slavného vítězství Celticu ve finále poháru mistrů evropských zemí nad Interem Milán v poměru 2-1. Je to triumfální póza našeho kapitána, který převzal pohár mistrů evropských zemí právě před 50 lety.
Secondly, we have the miniature of the Celtic captain Billy McNeill, and it's the statue which stands outside Celtic Park. These gifts are from Celtic Football Club.
Potom ještě vysvětlení k tomu druhému dárku, který se týká jejich asistenta, kouče, pohár. Nevím přesně, jakou má souvislost.
We also have some Celtic books which we would like to present to Bernie Thompson, to Miroslav, to Peter and to Libor.
Máme s sebou také několik knih o Celticu Glasgow, které bychom rádi předali Berniemu Thompsonovi a dalším osobám ze přítomným.
Bernie Thompson, please.
Who's next?
Peter, you're next.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Miroslav, please.
I tried to escape. Sorry. Thank you very much.
And also Libor, please. I would just like to thank everyone now once again on behalf of the Celtic Graves Society for everything you have done for Johnny Madden and for Celtic Football Club. I would like to introduce Brendan O'Fiach, who will now play an Irish air. Thank you very much.
Ještě jednou vám za všechno velice děkuji. Za všechno, co jste připravili, jak pro nás, tak pro Celtic Glasgow v našich osobách. A teď by vám náš host ze Severního Irska rád zahrál slíbenou melodii. Máme s sebou také knížečky o Johnu Maddenovi, které bychom rádi rozdali, kdo si bude chtít přečíst něco o něm, samozřejmě zadarmo. A tím vlastně asi oficiální část naší vzpomínky skoro končí.
Tak já bych poprosil diváka, aby nám něco zahrál a položíme květiny na Johna Maddena. Pokud máte nějaký kytky, tak se přidejte a na závěr se ještě nějak se tady poskládáme.
I work for the radio English language service, so maybe could you say how big a legend both for Celtic, well basically for Celtic and maybe also historically for Slavia Prague, Mr. Madden was? How revolutionary was he and how much is he remembered back in Glasgow?
Well, Celtic legend Johnny Madden played in our very first ever match, and he was a player who the Celtic committee had tried to get for a year after that, and when we eventually got him in 1889, he became part of a legendary Celtic team, because although we've had fantastic eras down the years, for example winning the European Cup, 9 titles in a row, for me the most important part of any club's history is at the very start, because the pioneers of the club in the first 10 years are the ones that made Celtic. If it wasn't for people like Johnny Madden at Celtic at the very start, we wouldn't have had Lisbon. So Johnny Madden, Celtic are always eternally grateful for, as well as all the early Celtic founders and pioneers, and they will always have a special place in our heart. The fact that Johnny Madden then came to Prague and made a fantastic success with Slavia Prague makes every Celtic fan extremely proud, because it shows that what he learned at Celtic, he then took elsewhere and made Slavia Prague one of the biggest clubs in Europe. You know, the very fact that he stayed here 25 years showed how much he loved Prague, the city, and Slavia Prague, the football club. He spent his first 40 years with Celtic in Glasgow. He spent the rest of his life with Slavia Prague in Prague. And we are indebted to the people of Prague for taking Johnny to their hearts and doing just like the Celtic fans do. We always remember our dead, and so we are greatly appreciative of the Slavia Prague fans who are doing the same for Johnny Madden.
How do you find the conditions in which the grave is preserved?
It's fantastic, it's humbling, and it shows you exactly what we would expect of the Slavia Prague fans from what we've seen of them so far. Slavia Prague fans are a credit to themselves, to their club, to their city and to their country, to remember a legend, a Celtic legend and a Slavia Prague legend, and we would like to thank Slavia Prague fans from the bottom of our hearts.
And you mentioned that you, after just one day, you understand Johnny Madden, why he fell in love with Prague. So, what's your impression?
Well, it's a beautiful city. It's a very welcoming city. When we came here, we weren't quite sure what to expect. We were surprised we got the sunshine, which we never get in Scotland. But we were surprised even more by the welcome from Ohhh, Pratel and Slavia Prague. Yesterday we were overwhelmed. Ohhh, Pratel picked us up at the airport. The person, Libor, spent the whole day with us, taking his minibus and taking us to, first of all, Slavia Prague's ground, where we watched them training. We met the manager. We got a tour of the ground. They even fed us in the restaurant for lunch. The hospitality was unbelievable, and we as Celtic supporters have definitely in one day taken Slavia Prague to our hearts.
Tell us about the presents you brought to Slavia. This is very symbolic for your club.
Yes, the present to Obdor Bratel was the original Celtic top. The original Celtic top in 1888. As you see, a white top with a green collar. Green and white has always been Celtic's colours, and the Celtic cross on the right side of the Celtic top was the original Celtic badge as well. This was obviously, Celtic were formed for charitable reasons, to feed the poor in the back streets of Glasgow. It was a very humble beginning Celtic had, and we're extremely proud that a club that rose from being almost a ghetto club has risen to become one of the biggest clubs in world football. When we advised Celtic Football Club that we were coming over and of the friendship with Slavia Prague, the club wished to make a gift to Slavia Prague. And so, in the 50th anniversary of Lisbon, they gave us a miniature European Cup to take over, and also a miniature Billy McNeil statue. Now, none of us have ever even seen a miniature Billy McNeil statue. It is an extremely precious gift that Celtic have passed to us to give to Slavia Prague Football Club, and I think it shows you, a great mark of the appreciation that Celtic have for Slavia Prague, for taking good care of Johnny Madden at his graveside, but for taking him to their hearts when he came here in 1905.
Are you going to the derby tomorrow?
We were going, but unfortunately our flight is on Sunday morning and the game get changed to the Sunday, so we did have tickets when it was a Saturday match, and then when they changed it to Sunday we'll miss it, but we would love to come back, and we wish Slavia Prague all the best tomorrow.
Can you tell us why did you establish the Celtic Graves Society, please?
The Celtic Graves Society were formed because it was discovered by just a Celtic fan that one of our greatest ever managers, Willie Maley, his graveside, the headstone was in a state of disrepair. It had almost been as if the graveside had been forgotten, although the man was never forgotten. So a group of us got together in a Glasgow pub, as you always do, and we discussed how we could form a group to do something about this, and we immediately set up a target of locating the graves of the very first Celtic team in 1888, which we done, and we made sure all the graves were marked. Any graves that weren't marked, we held a ceremony and we bought a small marker, and we invited the family along. So we were then telling the story of this individual. Many of the individuals would have been forgotten long ago, but other individuals are still legendary names. But no matter what, they're all part of the Celtic story. So that's been going for 7 years. We've done over 30 ceremonies, some big, some small, because it doesn't matter who it is, they're all Celtic players, and we've still got a long way to go.
Thank you.
Brendan, we've told the story of Johnny Madden today, but we were also at Dukla Prague yesterday. So what can you tell us about Dukla Prague and how important the other side of why Prague is also very important to Celtic's history?
Yeah, we went to Dukla Prague's ground yesterday after visiting Slavia Prague, and we thought we couldn't visit Prague without going to the scene of the semi-final of the European Cup, where we drew nothing each in a match that was described even by the immortal Jock Stein as a total defensive game plan by Celtic after we led 3-1 from the first game. But it worked, and that's all that mattered. So to visit the ground almost 50 years to the exact anniversary was incredible. We were then taken aback even further when we were met by the chairman of Dukla Prague, And also, even better, a player who played in that match was there.
Ivo Novak.
To share with us his memories from 50 years ago. It was absolutely fantastic, and he was really humorous. And we asked him what was his opinion of Jimmy Johnston, and he said, the flying flea. And he just done a kind of a hand gesture as if whoosh, exactly, whoosh. I wasn't sure how he expressed it on the radio, so whoosh as he flew past him was exactly how he expressed it. The chairman as well took us up into the boardroom, gave us a drink, showed us pictures that they had, and we shared memories for a couple of hours as he took us round a tour of the ground as well. The ground itself has hardly changed. The steep terrace that was behind the iconic picture of Jimmy Johnston and Tommy Gemmell at the end of the match where they're wearing the Dukla Prague strips. We thought of trying to reenact it, but some of us are a wee bit too old and had too many pies to attempt it. But to be in the same ground, at the same spot as these iconic pictures, albeit the only difference in the background, the steep terrace is now a stand, but it's still the exact same steep terrace the stand is built on. So it was absolutely fantastic. The chairman was speaking to us, and he was saying he was at the match. He was a 17-year-old student, and he had fantastic memories of the match as well, albeit it wasn't a great match for Dukla Prague. But once again, we just couldn't believe, the hospitality. They had obviously went way out their way, to bring the chairman in and a former player. Now, the Celtic Graves Society patron is Jim Craig, Lisbon Lion, who also played in Dukla Prague. And we spoke to Ivo about Jim Craig as well. He passed on his best wishes. Ivo also said to offer his sincere condolences for the loss of Tommy Gemmell. So it was very touching as well.
Brilliant. You would like to playing Slavia against Celtic one day, maybe in...
That would be a dream come true. And it could well happen, because we could easily meet in the Champions League qualifiers. It would be a dream for us to come back to Slavia Prague, but it would even be a bigger dream to welcome Slavia Prague to Celtic Park.
Yep.
And I am certain that the fans will be welcomed with open arms.
Brilliant. Very good, man.
I'm joined by Celtic fans Kenny, Owen and Davy, and myself, Jim, and we're going to talk about the commemoration for Johnny Madden in Prague last weekend, which was attended and part organised by the Celtic Graves Society. But before we talk about the commemoration, there's some other audio of the commemoration, and there's an interview with another committee member of the Celtic Graves Society. Davy on the call is on the committee of the Graves Society, but Owen and Kenny, you're not on the committee. As Celtic fans, is this the first Celtic Graves Society event you've been to? Maybe I'll ask that to you first, Kenny. Is this your first one, or have you been to a few before?
Hi Jim, I've been to quite a few events since I heard it was the podcast that got me interested in it, with the Celtic Underground. I haven't heard that a few years ago. I thought I want to see what's going on down at Dalbeth Cemetery, and if I've had the chance to go to other events, then I've tried to get there. So
you must have heard that when you were 12 or 13 or something. You're a Wayne.
So of course, absolutely. I was the youngest. I know. So not that age.
But that's interesting itself, Kenny. You're a young lad. In fact, in Prague, one of the boys said that they expected a group of guys to come on with the white beards and the Zimmer frames. But you're a young fan. What in particular interests you about the Celtic Graves Society?
I think it's got to be its history, Jim. Celtic fans are famous for wanting to know their history, so that's what the Celtic Graves Society does. It gives you that link to the past.
And is it the old history, Kenny? Do you think we cover the old history enough as Celtic fans? I know this season everything is about Lisbon. Is it, going back?
Celtic Graves goes deeper, quite a bit further back, and you get a wee bit more vivid description. I mean, if you've been to any of the ceremonies, they really do take you back. I think is it Terry Dick that does some of the speaking, and he's absolutely fantastic. He just paints the pictures for you, takes you right back to the grimy days in Glasgow,
And Owen, what about yourself? Is it your first ceremony? I think you mentioned that it might be, but was it your first one this weekend?
This is actually my second. The first one I went to the old the original ground. It was covered when they unveiled the plaque.
Okay, aye.
The plaque, which I've always been intrigued by what they've done, and it's one of these things, when Celtic fans get together, it's a phenomenal thing that they do, especially this Celtic Graves Society. I mean, I was reading things on the internet, and you're thinking, what is it? And then you start to delve into it a bit more. You realise that it's a group of guys that are doing a lot of great things for the graves of ex-players and the original ground, and it just blows your mind. Fortunately, when I went along there, I actually bumped into Davey. We used to be ex-colleagues together.
So you knew Davey before. Was it easier to go to a Celtic Graves Society event because you knew somebody? Do you think there's any barriers to going? Do you have to know your history? What do you reckon?
Not at all. Obviously, the first time I went there and met Davey, I didn't know he was there actually, so it was when I crossed the bench. They had the brochures for sale for people that do go along. It was recognised me, and then obviously contacted him later on and seen him at a couple of games since, and then I found out about the Prague trip, and I just chanced my luck and asked him would it be possible, because I wanted to actually see a grave, and I live in England, so it's not always possible to get up to see an actual graveside, so I thought this would be a great opportunity to go and see what the guy's actually done.
Right, okay. Is that you smitten? Obviously, you tend to see, when you go to one, you go to the next one and you see people who have almost been converted. Is that you smitten? Are you going to be at them on now?
I wish. I know there's one soon. Right. I can't get to that, fortunately.
Aye.
But yeah, I'll get to more and more as they come along.
Good. And Davey, on to yourself. Obviously, you're on the committee of the Celtic Graves Society. Can you give us any sort of background to the weekend?
Hi Jim, firstly thanks ever so much for giving me the opportunity to come on and say a few words on behalf of the Society. I'm just hearing what a few of the lads are saying there, and it's absolutely heartwarming to hear their opinions on the things that the committee at large do. What actually happened in terms of the Prague trip, Jim, was we were approached and made aware that there was going to be a commemoration in the city of Prague to obviously commemorate Johnny Madden. So, knowing what we know of Johnny Madden through lots and lots of research, that was a perfect opportunity to go along and pay our respects. Johnny Madden is a very well-known Celtic player who, since leaving Celtic, went over to Prague and basically taught them how to play football. He was the first real coach that actually had a coaching ethos and completely transformed the way that the Czech people played football, So when all that was all coming together, we were kindly invited to go over as part of a delegation, and we absolutely jumped at the chance,
How did punters like us get involved in? Is that people who are known to the society, or is it really,
to be honest, yeah, sorry Jim, basically, I mean, with all the events, all the Celtic Graves events, they're open to everyone. It's not a closed community, they're absolutely open to everyone, and through social media, we have Facebook accounts, we have Twitter accounts, and the build up to each and every ceremony that we have, we put the word out there, and we can't stress enough to absolutely everyone, come along. You don't have to know anyone, come along and pay your respects. And I can understand, not everyone's as callous as me and brass naked as me. So a lot of people would perhaps feel intimidated about turning up when they're maybe under the impression that everyone knows each other, and that's not the case. That's never been the case.
Yep.
And to the point where the committee guys and supporters like yourselves actually go around and make new people feel welcome, because that's what it's all about. We wanted to share the word, you know.
Right.
So when it came, obviously, for getting kind of numbers together, I'm sure that, as you realise with a lot of trips, there's a group dynamic. So especially going abroad, you're going to a place like Prague, which is traditionally a kind of party place. The trip was essentially to commemorate a Celtic and a Slavia Prague legend.
Aye.
So obviously we were mindful of people that wanted to come along. There was 4 committee members attended, and there was 3 fans, if you like. Well, technically we're all fans together, but there was 3 out with the committee who we put the offer out to, and they were, thankfully, they agreed to come along and join us, you know.
I mean, what were your expectations beforehand? So maybe start with you, Kenny. What were your expectations about the trip once you'd heard a bit about it?
I wasn't really sure, Jim, what to expect, to be honest. You know, going to Prague, first and foremost, beautiful city. Looking forward to that. Interested to see if the Prague guys, their ceremony, what it would be like compared to Celtic Graves ceremonies. And I have to say, they were very similar, really, and really good.
So I suppose that's a wee bit different, isn't it, Kenny? That this time, this is, in effect, it's, you know, a joint ceremony, or, you know, it's in somebody else's backyard rather than our backyard at Dalbeth.
Exactly. And so it was nice to be in a slightly different environment, you know. It was nice to be bathed in sunshine, you know. It was absolutely roasting. A few years get burnt at the graveside. No, the expectations were that it would be good. I just didn't realise how good it would be, and it's exceeded expectations, to be honest.
Aye, and I remember listening to some stuff in the past that what matters to the Graves Society is that by the end of the event, or by the end of the preparation and the ceremony, you know a lot more about the player than beforehand. Would you say you're a bit of an expert on Johnny Madden now?
I've got a good bit more knowledge now of the guy.
So, Owen, what were your expectations of the trip?
I had a low expectation level, to be fair. Obviously going abroad, you're thinking there's going to be us, certainly. I knew obviously the numbers coming from Scotland and England, if you like, but to actually get over there, when we were up in the morning in the minibus and we turned that corner, and to see all the Slavia fans, or the Czech people standing outside the cemetery, it blew me away.
Aye.
It really did. It moved me to tears, in fact.
Yep.
Which the afternoon folk ceremony did on several occasions. It was overwhelming. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, I read a little bit about him, the same as Kenny, not too much of what he was, but we certainly know who he was, what his background was, and where he ended up. And to see other people have something in common with you, you know, being there for one person that died 1948, if I remember correctly, for that to happen almost 70 years ago, it's absolutely phenomenal. And to walk along the same part of the graveyard where the body was carried in the original session, you know, you're thinking there is a hell of a lot of history, and it was really nice to be part of something else to commemorate it. You know, I was fortunate enough I got asked to put the flowers on the grave.
Right. Yeah.
And coming over as a fan, I was shocked. It was a great pleasure to do such a thing in behalf of us, as in Celtic supporters. That's us, you know.
Aye.
And to help the committee with a little bit, it was really nice to be part of it, and it'll live for me for eternity.
Aye, because I know we sing the songs and we put the banners up, but to be that close to the person, to that person's soul, it's difficult to describe just how sort of emotional at times it can be. I suppose the other thing, when I first heard the Johnny Madden story, I was a wee bit dubious. I thought, aye, Celtic player, Celtic legend, and then you hear...
Johnny become, yeah. I mean, when you walk into the stadium on our first day, when we got there on the Friday, stepped off a plane and our friend Lebo to take us to Slavia Prague Stadium, which is actually very impressive. And so you go in, and there is Johnny Madden, you know, and it's at a 10-foot high poster, along with, you know, a few other legends, but he is, like, you know, front and centre in our history. There is no Slavia Prague without Johnny Madden, and that really does come across, that it wasn't just a Celtic hero, which is iconic enough, but he truly is the father of Czech football. And you can't imagine, you know, when Davey kindly asked me if I'd like to come, jumped at the chance. You really want to find out about the guy, and it's absolutely fascinating.
And the guy, I know again it's touched on in the actual ceremony and some of the interviews, but Davey, the guy is massive in Czech football.
Huge.
Did the story amaze you like it did the rest of us?
Jim, to be honest with you, I mean, I'm running out of superlatives to describe how that weekend went, you know.
Aye.
Just when you're among the people who share the same bond as we do with Johnny Madden, the passion, you can actually tell the love and affection that they had for this one guy from where we're from. You know, it was incredible. And I mean, I know that Slavia Prague are now in a new purpose-built stadium and stuff, but when you look at the ethos of what the club have came from, pretty much through his own doing, in a sense, you know, it was his whole coaching philosophy that actually, probably back in those days, the same as most teams, it was a kind of amateurish way that football was treated, but he actually went over there with a purpose and completely transformed it, you know, to the point where they're actually the Czech people, by and large, the national team outstrip our national team now, you know, and Johnny Madden must have had a huge part in that when you think about it, you know. So the way that he was, you could just see how revered he was that day in the cemetery, you know. It was breathtaking, absolutely breathtaking.
And this was covered by Czech television, it was covered by Czech radio, there was loads of Czech press there, which, you know, gives you a sense of just how much this guy is revered. And I kept having to pinch myself that actually he played in our first ever match.
Yes.
This guy in Prague was a member of our first Scottish Cup winning team. And I literally had to keep pinching myself that was the case, that this guy not only is a huge part of your history, he made such a difference all there.
Incredible.
Having one story like that is incredible, but to have two, you've just, you know, you've nailed it. It's absolutely incredible.
And Owen, you, just to move us to the present day a wee bit, you actually caught a bit of the Slavia versus Sparta Prague derby. What was that experience like?
That was absolutely fantastic. I mean, we have a great crowd at our ground, we know that, the Green Brigade and everything that goes on there, creating a great atmosphere. But the boys, I was up with the Slavia Prague end, it's called Top.
Aye, right.
And the goals they had and the way that they actually chanting the game, it's just constant, non-stop. And they have a capo who's got a microphone, and you want to see the work lad puts in. He's bouncing, he's jumping, he's all around, he's dancing, he's singing, and it's all going on, you know. And you just think to yourself, this is really getting you going. Now, I've been to grounds all over Europe, watching other teams. Celtic is my team, but see, going there, you think to yourself, this is getting everybody going. Even if you were a neutral, you're going to get into this game just because of the crowd and the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that others get to when they come to our ground and see the atmosphere that we have. It's absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, I never seen the goals. They had to leave at half time to get the flight back. But the first 45 minutes is anything to go by. It was fantastic.
Well, I suppose what you touch on there is the relationship now with the Slavia Prague fans. Obviously, we met quite a few people at the weekend. I think it's safe to say there's a number of converted Slavia Prague fans, but from the other side, do you think there are a number of converted Celtic fans amongst the boys and the girls that we met out there?
I'd like to think so.
Without a doubt, Jim. You know, in particular, on the day of the commemoration for Johnny Madden, when we arrived, as Kenny said, the weather was fantastic. It really was absolutely incredible weather. So by the time we arrived there was a considerable crowd waiting, not necessarily waiting on us, but waiting on the beginning of the ceremony. And the very fact that there was other people there with Celtic stuff on, it wasn't just us getting off the bus representing Celtic, there was actually other Celtic fans there.
Aye.
And in some cases actually Czech people. You know, because what struck my mind, and I actually put a wee follow up on Twitter later on that night, was the first thing I noticed was a young couple, perhaps, I don't know, maybe late 20s possibly. So they had this wee kid in a buggy, and the three of them were head to toe in Celtic stuff. So straight away I thought, that's absolutely brilliant. I'll need to make a wee mental note to approach them and thank them for their attendance.
Yep.
So because it was so busy and there was media there and people were wanting photographs and there was interviews happening, the place was absolutely buzzing, and this is before the ceremony. So I made a conscious effort to get across to them, just have a wee chat with them and thank them very much for attending. But here when I got across to them, they didn't speak a word of English. They were from Prague. And as it's transpired now that we've been back in touch with them now, the society have been back in touch with them personally, and the big fella, I think his first name is Michael, forgive me, I don't remember his name, but I'm sure it was Michael, and he explained when we got in touch with him that he's just always, ever since he was a child, loved Celtic. He's loved the ethos, he said the first thing that caught his attention, as with many fans, and if you're watching a game on TV, the first thing you notice is the green and white hoops. The world over, they stand out straight away. He said, as a kid, that was the first thing that caught his attention. And from there, he followed. He's obviously been in the Champions League, raises our profile, and he's just absolutely loved Celtic ever since, to the point where Celtic are his team. A boy born and bred in Prague doesn't have a word of English, to the point where his wee toddler and the pram was also head to toe. It was incredible. It just that's probably one of my everlasting memories of the trip, was those people take the time and effort to come along and do what Celtic fans do.
You see, that makes me want to just stand up and go, yes! That's so heartwarming. That's absolutely what we hope we're about to hear.
It really was, yeah.
And that boy, that family, it's unfair to say just that boy, that family.
Yeah, his wife as well,
have no Celtic connection, there's no Scottish or Irish heritage. They're just Celtic fans in Prague. Brilliant.
I had another wee coincidence as well when I got on the plane coming home, and I got to my row, and my seat was at the end, and the two women in the seats next to me kind of said, "Oh, hello." I said, chatting away, and they said, "We were at your ceremony on Saturday." And
really?
How did that happen? So they were in the hotel across the road from the cemetery, and they came out and they were just about to make their way into town centre, and they heard the bagpipes, and they saw all the red of Slavia, the red and white of Slavia, and they saw it was Celtic over there as well. So they came over and sort of just tagged along, really, and just went in with us into the cemetery to the gravesite and watched the ceremony, and got the programme and stuff like that, and just thought, and I was just asking what they thought of it, and just said, wow, what a fascinating story, and an incredible story, and just that they're so glad that they done it, so glad that they came to the hotel at that point in time to just join in, you know. And then I'm sitting next to them in the plane home. They really thought it was fantastic.
I mean, were they football fans? Were they Celtic fans, or were they literally just there in Prague for the weekend?
They liked the football, but maybe slightly towards Celtic, but you know, not that interested. But then after the ceremony, we were like, that was fascinating. That was really, really interesting. You know, I gave them the programmes and stuff like that given to them. So they went home they went to the hotel room that night, and they were reading up about it for a while. You know, and so they've got a wee bit of knowledge about Johnny Madden as well, you know. So
that's mere converts. I hope Peter's listening to this. These boys going out and evangelising in Prague. It's the way to spread the word. I suppose one of the other things for the weekend was a visit to Dukla Prague. There's a lot of focus this year on Lisbon, rightly, and the 50th anniversary of Lisbon. Almost 50 years to the day we played Dukla Prague at home and then away, and somehow I don't know if there's any background on how it actually came about, Davey.
But what kind of happened with that, Jim, to give you a wee kind of explanation? Obviously we've been preparing it for a wee while in advance, you know, and trying to make our days as full as we possibly could, you know, because we were on, bearing in mind, we were only there 2 days. I think we arrived on the Friday morning about 9:30, and we left there at 8 o'clock on the Sunday morning, so we literally had all day Friday and all day Saturday. So we were trying to cram in as much as we possibly could. So we'd been in touch with Slavia, so we had an idea how the Slavia side was going to transpire, you know, to the point where they literally picked us up from the airport, took us straight to the stadium. We got a tour of the stadium. The team were actually training on the pitch as we arrived, so it was an absolute no-no. This doesn't normally happen, but they actually allowed us in to watch them train. Now, bear in mind, this is 2 days before their derby match, so it's obviously hush-hush. They're doing final tactics and what have you. So the very fact that they allowed us in there was incredible within itself. You know, they didn't have to do that, but they certainly did. And once the team had finished training and they went off the pitch, we were brought down kind of track side. So we come through the tunnel and ended up the actual Slavia coach came over. Couldn't have been any nicer, chatted away. He was happy to hear we were from Celtic, had great things to say about Celtic. Celtic are a huge club, we know that anyway, but when you see other people actually tell you how big our club is, it's heartwarming. It really is. It's incredible. So for the Slavia coach to stand with his arm round us saying, yes, Celtic fans, brilliant, good people, seen all your matches on Champions League, that's great. That's a great feeling. So after that, we'd arranged for lunch. They actually, as I say, it was a purpose-built stadium, so there's a restaurant as part of the kind of setup. So they took us, the officials from Slavia took us in for our lunch, and to the point where this restaurant, simply because it's part of the complex, the players and coaching staff actually come in for lunch as well. So we were actually sitting having our lunch side by side with all the players that we'd just seen running about in the pitch. It was surreal, you know. It was absolutely incredible. No one batted an eyelid. The players get peace to eat their lunch. There was no hassle, absolutely no bother at all. Everything was incredible.
God, somebody must have gone and taken a selfie with one of the players, surely.
I couldn't take my eyes off my dinner. So that was what I was wanting to do. But
there was no soup left after after us. And the bottom of the pot. Where's the soup?
If I could have wrung out my t-shirt, I think I spilled coffee out and put it back. So what happened then was we were mindful. We didn't want to play on the fact that we weren't wanting to push the Slavia guys by saying, look, we were actually going to see Dukla later on today, because it looks as though we're not appreciative, which we obviously were, but we'd actually arranged for later on that afternoon to visit Dukla Prague. Now, bearing in mind, as you were saying there, Jim, Celtic played Dukla Prague in the semi-final in '67, so we were all secretly wanting to get along to that as well. That was a must-see, you know. So by the time we arrived, the weather was absolutely fabulous. I think we were due there at 3 o'clock, so we got there just about 3. So we're kind of milling around outside because we don't really know what the script is. So we're standing outside waiting on some officials to arrive, and this wee fella, very dapper, you know, very smartly dressed, he turned up and we got our introductions. Here it transpires he's actually the chairman of the club, the chairman himself of Dukla Prague. So the very fact that he had came to the bother of welcoming representatives of Celtic was wonderful, absolutely brilliant. And it transpired there was a gentleman next to him The wee chairman fella, his English was perfect, absolutely perfect, but there was a gentleman with him, so we made kind of introductions as you do, and they started to take us through the stadium, what have you, show us various parts and what have you, but it transpired through the course of chatting away, and I mean our group, we were spellbound, we were absolutely speechless, because they were showing us all these things, and then it transpired that the elderly gentleman who turned up with the chairman was actually a gentleman called Ivan Novak, who actually played in the semi-final in '67. He was the centre half.
And who, can I just point out that Ivan Novak was in better nick than anybody who was out there.
In fact, I think it was actually you that recognised his name, Jim, was it not?
No, I recognise. I'm old in the tooth. I recognise they were talking about 1976 and Czechoslovakia, as it was then, winning the 1976 European Championships.
That's
right. And they had all of these footprints outside. I mean, outside of their ground was beautiful, the way they'd done it. Yep. They had footprints of all the players, i.e. not just their boots, but they'd actually taken a cast in bronze at their foot, and they had the goal, one single hand of the goalkeeper. And one of my earlier football memories, without giving my age away, was of Czechoslovakia winning the European Championship, beating West Germany, as it was then. Somebody will correct me on my political history, but beating West Germany on penalties in the European Championships. And one of the journalists who was with us was talking about it, and for them, he suddenly starts talking about it like it was our Lisbon. For them, 1976 to the Czech and the Slovak people was their Lisbon, and the people they were describing were a part of that. And I think Ivan was in the squad. I don't know if he actually played at that match itself, but to be in the company of people who I've read about Lisbon. I was alive when it happened, but I've no memories. But when you hear first-hand accounts of things that you remember in your lifetime, it's pretty special. So I went off on a bit of a football anorak's journey around the 1976 European Championships. And so Ivo Novak, Owen, Owen Kenny, did you get talking to this boy? I mean, did you expect somebody who actually played in '67 against us to be there?
It's like what he was talking about. He came to us, he was talking about Jimmy Johnston, and unfortunately I was born in '68, and when that guy was talking to you about the match and who he played against, and I think he called Jimmy Johnston the Flying Flea, and then he made a noise of whoosh, whoosh, he was everywhere sort of thing, you see it in your mind's eye, and to actually be there next to somebody that's played him, and the way that, I don't know about you, if you noticed it, but I think there was a glint in that guy's eye, talking about the guys that played against. And go back to the CEO, we were in his little VIP place with all the trophies and that, and to see them is amazing. And you walk up the stairs and get pictures of 67, and then you go further up, there's a hoops there, just hanging up there, and then the little mementos all over the place. But then you get the CEO pouring us a drink for all the boys, and you're thinking, this is a bit unreal. It's just a little bit unreal. I think we're all looking at each other. We're not kids for that full weekend. I think the whole thing. And the ground on itself, you've seen all the pictures, we've looked at all the books, it's not changed much. It's maybe a little bit outdated, but the stand, the building to the left of the stand, it just looked like if you could see it in black and white, it was as if you were there back in '67.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Absolutely phenomenal.
There's that famous photograph of Tommy Gemmill and Jimmy Johnston after the final whistle, and it's 0-0 and we're through the final at the club, and you can picture it when you're there. It's more modern on the stand across the way. It was a terrace, but you can see, you knew where you were standing, and it was lovely to be there. I mean, that's almost 50 years to the day for the semi-final now as well. So it was a nice touch to be going round Dukla Prague and speaking to someone who was in the same match, because obviously Dukla's a very important place in Celtic history.
Yeah, and it felt a wee bit like I don't know if it was the director's box or the VIP lounge, but it felt like that hadn't changed much for 1967 either. It was pretty old school. And
that was probably the last time you bought a drink as well, Jim.
Well, thankfully, the only reason I recall all this with such fondness is that it was the chairman putting his hand in the Dukla Prague pocket and not me having to get in.
That's another thing we could have a word with Peter about.
Well, there you go, Peter and Ian Banky, showing punters round. I think that's an expansion into it. That's a new area for their job description. Really special. In fact, with Dukla, I don't know if it's just because it hasn't changed that much, but the Stadio Nacional in Lisbon, when I was there, didn't feel as if it had changed much, and I thought the Dukla Prague ground was fairly similar to Stadio Nacional.
That's right. I mean, there's actual old style terracing in the corner that we stood at when we walked in.
Yeah.
It did have an old stadium feel to it. It was lovely. Kind of mix of the old and the new, really. And
to have a player there for 1967, who actually, he was saying he came over. We had a friendly, which because of the Commonwealth Games we had to play at St Mirren, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but
it was St Mirren, yeah, that's correct.
In 2014, and he came over for that, and he said that when he came into the ground he expected to see the old Celtic Park. He expected to see the jungle in front of him, the Celtic end. He walked out to this big modern stadium, which almost it felt as if it took him back a wee bit. He was taken aback a little bit because his own ground, and they were so into their club.
Yeah.
So after this weekend, guys, do you think there'll be a return visit? How do you repay the hospitality that those people showed us?
We spent a lot of the weekend collectively as a group blown away, obviously, but the hospitality we'd received. And in private moments we were speaking to one another and saying, how could we even come close to repaying this hospitality? How could we possibly understand? And I'd spoken to a few of the Slavia guys, and I was saying, my goodness, I don't know if we could ever do all of this. And what they said was, in terms of the stadium kind of stuff, they said they appreciate the Celtic are a far bigger club, so I think the chances of us getting a group of Slavia boys pitch side well Celtic train and getting a wee curry in with Brendan might be a bit too much to ask for, but
you're a man of influence though, Davy, so I'm sure you can pull it.
Jeez, oh man, my son doesn't even want to go to Celtic Park with me anyway. It's how can we put into words what we all collectively felt? I really don't know how we could possibly repay that. It was an incredible few days.
Yeah.
And that's your hospitality from the local lads as well. The things that they did for us, and the places that they took us, and the free time that they gave up for us.
Yeah.
That was phenomenal. There was a lot of time and care given out to us, and it just, I think we were like kids in a sweet shop. I think if you looked around at any one of us at any moment, I think our eyes were wide open and we were like, wow, constantly. And that was unbelievable. And for these guys to do that, it's amazing.
I mean, even to the point where on the Saturday evening, we were invited along on behalf of Slavia Prague. We were invited along to a dinner that they had set out for us. So, knowing us guys from Glasgow, we're quite happy with a swally and then a kebab up the road, you know what I mean? So, we'd been invited along to what transpired to be the restaurant belonging to a guy who, his name is Roman Vanek. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it turns out that Roman is a very well-known celebrity chef in the Czech Republic. So he invited us along, and obviously with a few of the Slavia boys and what have you. and nothing was any bother, absolutely nothing. It was lavish, the place, the settings was on the river's side looking out. It was absolutely beautiful.
And if I'll add to that, Davy, the Slavia directors, the Slavia directors were also there, weren't they?
They were indeed, yes. There was a fella, Giri, and another wee fella, Thomas.
Yep.
And we'd met them when we first got to the stadium on the Friday morning. They introduced themselves to us and explained, because we were guests at Celtic, they were going to have the dinner for us. So we knew their faces, and obviously we got there on Saturday evening. I mean, how many was at that table? Was there about 20 of us, as many as that?
Yeah, about that, maybe 20.
About 20, and as it transpired, Brendan and I, one of the other lads that was on the group, we were sitting directly across from the directors. So I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, what can we talk about in kind of broken pidgin English that I possess? Their English is perfect. So I'm thinking, what the hell can we talk about? And the best thing that could possibly have happened during all the cordial chat that we all had, and it was really, really laid back, there was no formalities, everything was absolutely fine, but we had the good sense to bring along an expensive bottle of whiskey, and we put it in the middle of the table, and once we all got a wee nip of that loosened up the tongue a wee bit, and then from then on it was plain sailing. It was absolutely brilliant.
At one point, I'll interject, at one point, Miro, who again was a fantastic guy, who had a fantastic knowledge of his football club, said that he's been to some events with Slavia Prague, and I don't know if it was necessarily other football teams, but other groups, and it wasn't in that restaurant, but he said in the past there's been one side of the table talking to each other, and then the other side of the table has been talking to each other, and it's been a case of ne'er the twain shall meet. But in this, you looked down the table and everybody was talking to each other like they'd been pals for years, or I mean everybody, it was like boy girl at some places. It was like Celtic Slavia. It's like, right, where'll I sit? I'll just sit and yak away to whoever's next to me. And it was looking down that table at times, as soon as Miro pointed it out, I noticed it and I was looking at it, and it actually made me really proud, or humble also because of the welcome, but proud that actually we can go there as proud Celtic fans and
ambassadors of the club as well. When you think about it, it's proud to it's good to make a good impression that probably worldwide a lot of football fans get it in the neck sometimes. We were all individually aware that we were there as ambassadors of Celtic Football Club as well, so it was great the way that everyone all mixed. It really was. There was no formalities, there was no airs and graces, everyone chatted away, and the most important thing is we all laughed. We had a great laugh. There was a bond, there was a common bond. You could tell that they could see that we were genuine football fans, as well as Celtic fans were genuine football fans. They were pretty much the same. And the connection that we made was brilliant on that evening and the day before.
Aye, and I would say, I don't know if you'd agree, Owen, but that's where the connection became, as David just said there, about being football fans. Rather, the Johnny Madden connection was there, but this was about being football fans with shared values. Would you agree?
Definitely. Just like Dave said there, when you're all talking to each other, I mean, you've obviously there's one common thing is the football, but for me the highlight of the evening in that dinner, when the gifts were starting to get put out, that was just fantastic. The guys' faces, I mean, you're talking about directors of the club, and they're getting presents for the Celtic Graves Society and Celtic itself, and their faces as well. They were amazed of what they got from us.
And it was great to see the almost like that childish joy, as you say, Owen, the childish joy of getting a Celtic top. To see the boys' face, and that's not to say that they've always been Celtic fans, they've always wanted a Celtic top, but there was a real respect.
The first thing they done, they took their jackets off and put their tops on, didn't they, to get pictures?
So the celebrity chef Roman, he had got a top as well. Now he is related
through marriage to Johnny Madden. Am I right?
That's correct, aye.
Yeah. I mean, there's another link that, you know, it's phenomenal. You know, the most famous chef is in Czech Republic is related to the father, the famous father of Czech football.
Two other things for that night, boys, I'm going to ask you about. One of which is Lubomir Moravchik, which I might direct at you on, and the second thing, and maybe the final and appropriate thing, is the Johnny Madden song, which I might have to direct at the author, or the co-author, Kenny. So I'll give you a minute to think about that, Kenny, but Owen.
Okay.
Owen, Lubomir Moravchik, what happened?
Right. It started the day before. David came over to us, Nick came over to us, and me and Kenny both had the Liverpool t-shirt on, the gift from God. So he started talking to us. He said, yeah, do you know him? I said, yeah, obviously he's one of the great players. So he left it at that on the Friday, and then the Saturday night we started talking about it again, and he started telling us different things, and he says, he's a friend of mine.
This was Stanislav, wasn't it? This was Stanislav at the end, who was a Czech journalist.
Journalist, yeah.
Yes. So he says he's a friend of mine. So we started showing him the video of Lubo trapping the ball with his ball, and then the different goals, and the look in Lubo's face.
Didn't he trap the ball with his ball? He trapped the ball with his bum.
Trapped the ball with his bum.
Sorry, you just broke up at an inappropriate moment then.
So then he said to us, he's my friend, and I thought, it's an easy story to tell. So about 10 minutes later, he moves me to the foyer, he's at the door, he's got his phone in his hand. He said to us, yeah, somebody to talk to you. I said, somebody to talk to me? He says, yeah, it's Lobo, my friend, he wants to talk to you. And I just like, no way. Because obviously, I can't remember exactly what was said, but we did touch on he's coming over for the foundation and blah blah blah, but then there's a queue of all you standing in front of me with waving your hands like you're waiting for Father Christmas. So I had to pass it on. But then I sat in the restaurant looking at the exit, waiting for you all to come through one by one, and I think you all peed your pants on the way in. It's absolutely fantastic. All these kids coming in with the presents, you know, having just spoken to somebody. That was amazing, absolutely amazing. And then I was just sitting there and I was tweeting about that for the next 20 minutes and telling friends and family. And man, obviously I wouldn't explain what the words they used, but it was, I was called a liar several times, but hey ho, I was there.
What struck me the most with that as well, lads, was, now bearing in mind, that was Saturday evening. He did this phone call from a friend, obviously, and then he spent the next 30 minutes of his time on a Saturday evening fielding calls from really excited Celtic fans who were probably asking him everything about anything, and yet he sat patiently. When I spoke to him, my God, it was like something that would be on Cilla Black. You know what I mean? Just the emotion and surprise, and he was very, very patient. And obviously, I was mindful I didn't want to bother him too long, so I think I was there for about 3 years.
You're such a considerate guy, aren't you?
But as I say, given the fact that was his Saturday evening, I don't know where he was, possibly at home, but he sat there and took the calls, absolutely no bother. I don't know if that was your experience as well of it, guys.
I mean, interestingly, I remember asking you, Kenny, or talking to you about it, and I was the same. That, you know, I think I talked at him. You know, I didn't want to have any sort of silences in it, so I just blabbed away for about 5 minutes. And Lubo said about 20 words or something.
Aye, basically that. I think by the time I got in the phone room, it was maybe I was the 6th or 7th person to speak.
Sitting in his pyjamas with a stick,
and he's like, "How many is there after I said what I needed to say, all I heard was bye, and then I passed it on to somebody else, and that was it. But it was a thrill. It was an absolute thrill. Everything seemed to fall into place this weekend, and it was just fantastic. It really was.
It was brand new, you know. He was talking about the foundation match, the Lubo's Legends against Hendrick's Heroes. He was talking about that, and you know, he said he's having a meeting soon with the foundation. They started talking about it, and I was excited talking to him, but he sounded excited about coming back for the match. I don't know where Lugo lives these days, but you know, he sounded
he said
really
he was
excited.
back in training as well. He's been training for it.
And did he try and talk you into getting into training as well, Davey, or did he pass on that?
I'm not saying I want boys.
Aye, so he did pass on it then, right, okay.
I'll just remind you that I ran recently the half marathon on behalf of the foundation. I don't know how many times you have done it, but I'll just drop that in the conversation.
Drop that in, good man. So finally, the Johnny Madden song. At some point in the evening, people started calling us out and saying, "Oh, come and listen to this, we've got an idea." And Kenny and Paul had been conspiring, and they'd been conspiring to do something that I think very few people at Celtic actually do, which was to come up with a song. But to come up with a song about a very special Celtic player, John William Madden. And Kenny, you and Paul actually came up with a song which I hope we might be able to play, but you actually wrote a song about Johnny Madden in half an hour. It's brilliant. What was the impetus for that? What was the story about that?
I mean, as you say, one of the Prague guys, he said, "Come on, we don't have a song, you've got to give us a song for Johnny Madden." And that, Paul's eyes lit up at that point, and I thought, oh, he's into something here. And we started sort of going through a few songs that might work, and I just went, "Oh, Johnny Madden," and that was basically this. He's like, that's the one, you know. So that's basically my contribution to this, you know what I mean? It's basically that was me, and Paul was the rest of it. I like to think. But we practiced it, and we basically said, look, if it's crap, tell us, but it seemed okay.
I don't know how the Beatles started up. I had to come up with something, and then Paul done the rest of it.
Exactly. So basically what happened is that they took a recording of it at the end of the night when we were all chanting it, and I think, I'm not too sure if it was Libor said that he would try and get it to the fans group in the ground the next day, send it on to them, and possibly try and hear it in the match on the Sunday. So I never saw any of the match, so I'm not sure whether that was a success or not. But you know, they now have something to work with. They might want to change it, you know what I mean? But it was lovely anyway. It was good. It was a good touch.
Well, you know what, Kenny, I would love to think that at one point Slavia Prague might sing it, but on the other hand, it's not just up to them. I'd love to think that we could have a song about Johnny Madden, and we could have a song about our guys for the 1890s, the 1900s and beyond, you know, a song about Patsy Gallagher, you know, a song about James Kelly, who I think the Graves Society will also be remembering soon. So whilst it would be lovely if Slavia Prague could sing it, it'd be great if Celtic could go all the way back to those very, very early days and remember every one of your heroes. So anyway, that's me getting emotional there.
Again.
Boys, I'm very grateful for your time tonight. You were wonderful company at the weekend, and you've been great company again tonight. So thanks very much for your time, and I think the city of Prague has a very favourable picture of Celtic after this weekend. So hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
As well as the food bank collection at Celtic on Saturday, which I believe starts at 12 p.m, right up to kick-off at 3 p.m. There is another very special Celtic Graves Society event, not on Saturday, but on Sunday. So I wonder if you could give us a little bit of the background and tell us a little bit more about that, David.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, the next event that we have, following closely on from the Prague commemoration, is actually this Sunday, which would be Sunday the 9th of April. It's at 2 p.m. in St Patrick's Cemetery, which is in King's Drive, New Stevenson. Now we're there to commemorate Celtic's first ever captain. Do you remember the name of James Kelly? Now, James Kelly without going into great detail at the moment because it will be explained more at the commemoration, James Kelly actually scored against Rangers in the very first ever match. So as well as being the captain, he scored in the first match. He's a very, very important figure in Celtic's history. So we've got the commemoration coming this Sunday. As I say, it's in New Stevenson. It's at 2 p.m. We've got some very special speakers coming along. You're more than welcome. Like I said earlier on, that this isn't a closed shop. Everyone, absolutely everyone of every age is welcome along to this, every generation. This is our club collectively. Everyone is welcome to join us. We'll look forward to seeing you, and please come along and say hi.
And as well as we talk about important figures in Celtic's history, James Kelly is one person who no less a figure than Brother Walfrid, John Glass and Dr. Conway said in those very early days, no Kelly, no Celtic. And they used the hard K because they said that without the capture of James Kelly and the prize capture of somebody like James Kelly, who was the preeminent star name in Scottish football at the time, Celtic would not have taken off as they did. So I think it'd be fair to say, Davy, that James Kelly is a hugely important figure in our football club's history.
Without a doubt, Jim, absolutely without a doubt. So we're very confident of getting a good turnout on Sunday for a very special man, basically.
Brilliant. And our first ever captain. We've had a lot of great captains, but James Kelly is a very special figure in our history. So I hope that goes very well, and I hope to see you there. So thanks again for your time, Davey. It's been great, and I wish the Celtic Graves Society every success for their events in the future. Thanks again.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that.
Is